basic information like the photos and videos we're asking for are being hidden contrary to law from the American people. So what is Biden hiding? We have important new lawsuits, and first out of the gate is the Biden disaster in Afghanistan. The surrender to Afghanistan, to the Taliban, the most humiliating defeat in the history of the United States of America. I was thinking, is it as bad as the War of 1812? I think it's worse because the correlation of forces obviously were to the benefit, I believe, to the British in 1812. But compared to our forces, compared to the Taliban, that we surrendered to them, abandoned Americans, Biden's decision-making and incompetency, and I think cognitive challenges led to 13 Americans at least being killed. They're Americans, for all we know, still stuck there. And we turned that country over to the Taliban in a way they was preventable. I mean, Biden, if he was competent and could have had his cake and eaten it too, meaning pulled out of Afghanistan for all intents and purposes while protecting our interests there. Instead, he just created a crisis, and we are going to hold him accountable. You know, the left and its media allies, and frankly, much of the Republican leadership want to move on, but Judicial Watch isn't going to move on. We are going to town on the Afghanistan debacle. We have countless FOIAs right now pending, and they're coming right, meaning they've been out there long enough that we can begin suing on them, because as you might imagine, the Biden administration has zero interest in complying with the Freedom of Information Act when it comes to the Afghanistan debacle. And the first lawsuit we filed, I think, is really interesting because everyone presumes they know what happened on an issue that is probably one of the most public issues related to Afghanistan, or the debacle, which was that day when the Kabul airport was overrun by Afghanis trying to flee the Taliban, and they were, attaching and clinging to the plane as it flew, and several people died, and who knows how many other people died. But it was, the video of that giant Air Force plane with the Afghanis clinging to it. No movie director could have come up with something, an image so horrifying and so emblematic of the Biden Afghanistan disaster. So one thing we asked for from the Pentagon was, well, what went on there? What was going on? We want a fuller picture of the chaos at the airport. So we asked for videos and photos of Afghans clinging to or falling from the U.S. military aircraft in Kabul. And, really simple question, right? And of course, the Pentagon failed to respond to our request. We asked for it immediately, August 16th of just a few months ago. And we asked for the following: images, including videos, showing Afghans clinging to the sides of a U.S. military aircraft at the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan. Images, including videos of persons falling from a U.S. Air Force C-17 military transport aircraft after taking off from the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan. So human remains, as you may know, were found in the wheel well of a C-17 aircraft that had taken off from Kabul. And according to the Air Force, before the aircrew could offload the cargo, the aircraft was surrounded by hundreds of Afghan civilians who had breached the airport perimeter. Faced with a rapidly deteriorating security situation around the aircraft, the C-17 crew decided to depart the airfield as quickly as possible, so they fled. In addition to videos seen online and in press reports, human remains were discovered in the wheel well of the C-17 after it landed at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar. The aircraft is currently impounded to provide time to collect the remains and inspect the aircraft before it is returned to flying status. Now, I don't want to see pictures of people dying or people about to die or people in harm's way because just for the kicks of it. It's important that the American people have the full information about the Afghanistan debacle. So the administration can be held accountable and anyone else who screwed up can be held accountable. Biden's Afghanistan surrender was an unmitigated disaster that directly killed and placed in harm's way our troops and and U.S. citizens. You know, one of the things that President Trump made a point of in his speech to Judicial Watch last week is that, you know, you have the individuals who died, but you also have troops who were injured for life. We forget those, right? But that blood's on Biden's hands too, in my view. And of course, no one's ever going to forget the images of those Afghanis clinging to and falling from the plane. Adding to the Afghan scandal now, which is bad as it is, basic information like the photos and videos we're asking for are being hidden contrary to law from the American people. So what is Biden hiding about Afghanistan? Why is the Pentagon refusing to turn over videos and pictures of what went on at the airport, specifically some of the most dramatic images that probably folks have seen since 9/11, frankly, in the United States? So what a nightmare! What a nightmare! And the media would have you pretend we need to move on. Let's talk about the debt limit. Let's talk about infrastructure, while ignoring the debacle in Afghanistan, which continues, which is ongoing. You know, just look up Taliban and see what they're doing in terms of killing people and doing the usual. Oh, by the way, because the media won't pick up on this for you, Biden has already begun funding the Taliban through the United Nations. He authorized the expenditures of certain funds using the United Nations as a cutout and another entity that the United States is the chief funder of. So they're money laundering your tax dollars to help the Taliban, quote, pay for healthcare workers in Afghanistan. So the Taliban's already getting money from Biden administration indirectly. I don't know how much more clear I could be, but it's there. And so not only did he surrender to the Taliban, he's now almost immediately begun funding their regime by helping them with, quote, healthcare workers using your tax dollars, authorizing this global fund that we fund to go in there for the United Nations and spend our tax dollars to help the Taliban, that the regime that is murdering and keeping our people, murdering Lord knows how many people, but also, again, making it difficult for our fellow Americans who are still there to get out. So it's a nightmare situation. And if there's ever a reason to impeach a president, I don't know what else one could come up with in terms of having sufficient reason to impeach a president than Biden's Afghanistan disaster.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.